credit. I want to show this video first. So it's we're talking about debt, and credit is a form of debt. And we're gonna go into the Dave Ramsey show, and it's this guy George Camel, and I don't know who the other guy is. Oh, this is Dave, him and Dave. So George Camel, or as we like to call him, Skippy, is gonna play a clip for Dave here on bad advice when it comes to taking out debt.
He's hosting it, right?
Yes, Steve Harvey.
Oh, yeah.
You know him. So Steve Harvey's hosting this show, and one of the contestants that's a part of this family, the question was all about a milestone that you'd love to achieve.
Let's play the clip.
Let's play it. Play that, James.
Give me a milestone people achieved they can be proud of.
Well, one day, I would like to have no debt.
Yes.
That's not going to happen. Debt is okay. OPM, other people's money, is how you get rich. You use other people's money, not yours. That's how you get rich.
Dave, I want to punch something, and you're the closest thing next to me, and so I'm going to refrain.
You know, here's the thing. If you're a game show host, that's cool. But you probably ought to just, host the game show. And not give out financial advice, for one thing. The second thing you
got to look at it from Steve Harvey's perspective. You know, and both of us have worked in theater before. We kind of understand how some of the production process works, right? And in film, typically you're not, even if you're producing it, you're getting the money from somewhere else, from an investor, right? To invest in the film. And that's how you're making your money, because if you don't have that investor, you can't pay for the film. George Lucas did not pay for Star Wars out of his pocket. He had to borrow money. So Steve Harvey comes from that world. Well, that's how you succeed as an entertainer, right? Is you have to borrow money. That's how you succeed in business too. All businesses borrow money and leverage it because they don't have it, right? You need to build a new factory to expand, and you don't have the money. You're gonna have to borrow it, or you're gonna have to get investors, right? So I don't think there's anything wrong with what he said at all. I think the problem is they're just very narrow about debts. All debt's bad, right? And when you approach it that way, there's no nuance to the discussion.
Well, not to mention, I don't know that there's a lot of point in, hammering away at Steve Harvey for having made a very sweepingly broad comment. Let's remember, he was making a comment on a game show he was hosting. It wasn't as though he was on a personal finance show and having the opportunity to expand upon what he meant.
Well,
he probably is not saying in every single situation you should borrow as much money as humanly possible. I'm sure that's not his point at all. He's, as you described, probably coming from the world of entertainment where having
business,
the people who put the money up for productions, etc., are not it's somebody else's money that's going into. So I'm sure that's the world he's coming from. And he probably has particular things he's thinking about meeting and not trying to pump to everybody that they should go in as much debt as humanly possible.
Well, and he's not saying you need to take out personal debt. He's saying you have to take out debt to become rich. And there's some truth to that. If you want, you have to take some risk. And if you don't have the money, you have to get it from somewhere in order to finance it, right? It's the whole thing, finance, right? It's the biggest part of what we do is distributing resources, right? Whether it's corporate or for an individual, that's what you're doing. And, if you need the money for something, you got to get from somewhere. Anyway, they're going to get... Go ahead.
I want to jump in and say, though, kudos to that guy on the game show for wanting to be debt-free, because quite frankly, I actually do think that was a good answer. Probably not an answer that made the survey, because probably not enough people said it, I'm going to guess.
Right.
But good on him for wanting to be debt free, because if he can have custody of a little bit more of his paycheck and give less of it to creditors, that's cool.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think the kid was talking about personal debt. I think Steve Harvey is talking about business.
Right, Steve Harvey's comment, in all honesty, probably doesn't really match with that kid
It
was
was
talking
saying,
about.
yeah. But anyway, we're gonna have them. Skippy got really upset and wants to punch people.
But apparently he doesn't want that people to be Dave, because Dave signs his paychecks, and I don't blame him. Punching your boss isn't usually good.
Nope. The salt is generally not good.
And not give out financial advice for one thing. The second thing you shouldn't do.
Oh, furthermore, I want to point this out. The other thing Steve Harvey isn't doing, he's not running around with a made-up title like financial expert, writing books and telling everybody he knows what he's talking about. Which is Dave's whole fucking business. Is he gave himself a made-up title, and he writes books saying he's a genius, when he's wrong. Like almost every clip I see of him, he's wrong about something major.
Is give out financial advice if you're $25 million in debt to the IRS.
You just airing out some laundry here,
I'm
Dave?
just saying, when you Google Steve Harvey, you find out he's $25 million in debt to the IRS. So if you're $25 million in debt to the IRS, when it comes to money advice, you should.
I actually looked this up because it was $25 million. I'm like, that was unbelievable to me, in the sense that I didn't quite believe
Okay,
that.
so was he $25 million in debt to the IRS? Gosh, I hope not, because that gives me heart palpitations just thinking about it.
He was $20 million in debt to the IRS, and he paid it all back in 2012. But what happened? Well, this is what they're ignoring, because they're going to spit on him for being in debt to the IRS and how he must be an idiot and you shouldn't take financial advice. So while they do that, before they do that, I'm going to tell you why they're complete hypocrites on this. Because Steve Harvey's debt to the IRS was because he hadn't paid taxes in several years, not because he didn't fill out taxes, not because he didn't write a check, but because his accountant stole the money from him to the tune of $20 million. And they didn't find out the accountant was doing that until after the accountant was dead. And one of his business partners found Mr. Harvey's taxes with all of his signed checks still attached.
Oh boy.
And the accountant would then just go move that amount of money out of Steve's accountant into his.
So the checks, the signed checks, if I understand correctly what you're saying, Steve Harvey had signed these checks to be
Go to the IRS.
taxes or whatever.
The accountant would not file the taxes. He'd just stick them in a drawer, and the exact amount of the check he would withdraw from the account and pocket.
So even if
Literally
Steve Harvey was like checking his online banking or whatever, he'd see that the money came
out, and he'd assume that the IRS
of it.
And he'd assume the IRS cashed the check.
Let's wag our fingers at Steve Harvey just a little bit here.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
Dave Ramsey, we'll get back to him. But, okay, yes, the accountant took out the same amount of money, so those balances would make a lot of sense. But I'm not going to lie to you. When I write a check to the IRS, I go on my online banking and I make sure that freaking check actually cleared.
But
it's the IRS.
But you got to remember, this was before 2012. So a lot of the online banking stuff wasn't available, and B, part of the reason was you hire an accountant is to handle a lot of that stuff for you. So I don't totally blame him. I think it's a tragedy he couldn't.
I'm just saying, certain really big, important, big ticket items, I would still probably really be checking up on with my own eyeballs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I do feel like your freaking taxes, that's, although you might not prepare them, like making sure those payments really went through, that is really one I would be wanting to lay my own eyeballs on.
Well,
so I feel like he really probably should have been looking at that more.
Right.
Not that it makes it his fault that he was stolen from or anything like that. I'm just saying, like,
I'm sure he does. I'm sure he double checks it now. So this is what happened. He was able to pay all $20 million back in 2.5 years.
Oh, good for him.
And the way he did it was he just took every job he could get. And, he gets paid a lot. But he paid $250,000 a month for 2.5 years to pay all that back. And he paid it back by 2012. Okay.
All right, here we go. This is for Steve Harvey.
Yeah, but he was.
You go, Steve Harvey, because
And I read the article, and he was talking about, yeah, it almost broke my marriage, and we were just devastated, right? And I don't blame him. But yeah, that's why if you think back to like 2010, you're like, Steve Harvey's everywhere. Because he was taking everything his agent could get him. Even if he didn't want to do it. He didn't have any flexibility because he had to pay that bill. Now, I will say this too. Steve Harvey today, his net worth is more than Dave Ramsey. Steve Harvey's worth well over $200 million. He's worth more than Dave Ramsey is. So Dave Ramsey is going to call him an idiot who's in debt with the IRS. He's not in debt anymore, and he's worth more than you are.
So, geez, you know what? I kind of feel like for as many people as are working for Ramsey Solutions, that somebody would have been sort of checking up on a bit of this story. Maybe not to get so many details, because
This was I got
get many details, but like you should be able to find out, oh, actually he's not in debt anymore to the IRS. You know what I mean?
I just Googled Steve Harvey IRS debt. The first article that came up was 4 paragraphs. I read it. That's where I got all this.
You actually didn't spend much time on it.
It took me 2 minutes.
Okay, so yours was 2 minutes worth of research. And while I shouldn't reveal this to our audience, our budget is
boom. Yeah, it's nothing. Yeah.
So
Our budget's negative at this point.
I don't think 2-minute Google research should be better than Ramsey Solutions with a whole bunch of staff that actually get paid money, right?
Yeah. The other reason I wanted to do this, because we're talking about debt and people being responsible in debt, and I'm going to get into credit here real quick, but I want to point out, Dave Ramsey's whole thing is you need to pay off all your debts, right? He's against the student loan forgiveness, because he's against you getting money or tax breaks or anything, right? But, and he'll probably opine on this. He thinks it's like you're stealing from everybody else, the taxpayers and stuff, right? Steve Harvey, once again, will remind you, in the 80s, when he tanked his business because he was over leveraged with all these like 90-day loans to like a tune of 1.2 million. After he bankrupted his business, he was forgiven $380,000, but under Chapter 11, that means the taxes for the business too were all forgiven. So he's gotten tax breaks from the IRS before. So it's hypocritical to get on Steve Harvey, who actually paid it back out of his own pocket, as opposed to filing for bankruptcy or some relief. So he's kind of being a hypocrite here. Plus, to sit there and say he's an idiot, it's like the guy's worth more than you are, Dave.
Shut up. You really should not open your yap. And on top of that, be a dream killer for a young guy.
Yeah.
That's what gets you on this show. I mean, if you want to just be stupid and $25 million in debt to the IRS and have your own game show, that's fine. But when you're a dream killer and you rile George up, that'll get you on this show.
Listen, here's the thing. Steve Harvey is a celebrity. He's a media mogul. He makes his money in a lot of ways. This young guy...
Being funny.
Yeah.
Is where he makes his money. So try that.
But don't
more
let
often and you won't be $25 million in debt.
This idea that this guy's debt is a bad thing to pay off because it's other people's money and therefore it's good debt. And this is how to build wealth.
It just occurred to me. Steve Harvey is using other people's money. Mine.
Your money.
And yours. We're taxpayers. He hasn't paid his tax bill. $25 million worth. He is using OPM.
There you are.
we just covered it. He paid the tax bill.
Not just that, it's, Dave, you've actually had taxes forgiven that you didn't pay during bankruptcy. So
Taxes?
Yeah, when when you bankrupt a business, they'll forgive the taxes. The federal government will forgive your taxes usually for that year. So most of the time, the state will too, because the business went under, right? So Dave Ramsey's done that before. So everything he's accusing Steve Harvey of in this clip is shit he does, or he's done, and it's not anything that Steve Harvey's done. This isn't even the pot calling the kettle black. You know, this, this is the squirrel calling Michael Jordan short. I mean, it's not even comparable. Everything he's accusing Steve Harvey of is bullshit, and it's all shit that Dave has done. I love it.